Thank you. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gumbaynggirr people, the traditional owners of the land we meet on today and tomorrow and yesterday, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and I welcome the participation of Aboriginal people here today. I have my speech written down, but I just can't move on without acknowledging the incredible inspiration that the two women who prefaced me have given us. And thank you so much to them both. You're a tough act to follow, but here goes. My name is Molly Tregoning, and I'm leading the work for the New South Wales EPA on the 20-year waste strategy for the state. I recognise and have worked with many of you, and it's exciting to see new faces as well, as interest in and participation in the fascinating world of waste seems to grow year on year. As I said, I lead the work for the EPA on the strategy. The EPA is working closely with other New South Wales government agencies to develop the strategy, including Planning, Treasury, Transport for New South Wales, the Greater Sydney Commission and the Office of the Chief Scientist and Engineer. It's a collaborative project. And we're also working closely with many of you here, your colleagues, your associates, your clients, who have already contributed so much to the early stages of the strategy. This morning I'll talk more about what we've learned from you so far and the further opportunities that you have for involvement. Many of you have been involved in the waste space for years and have strong views on why a long-term strategy is needed and what it should include. Many of you are newer to the area and have fresh or innovative ideas. I welcome all those views. I want you from this discussion now to understand why the government is acting, what's motivating the government to take this step, but then I'll also very much touch on what is it that you are telling us you need, what do you want to see from this strategy. Our data suggests that by 2036, if we maintain business as usual, waste generation will rise to 26 million tonnes per annum, an increase of 36% from today. The proportion of waste recovered will remain consistent if we maintain our consistent approach. In other words, if we do nothing, any issues which we face today around recycling rates and landfill capacity and waste diversion will be exacerbated as we grow our population and our economy. This slide highlights just a handful of the many diverse and complex issues we face when managing waste and resource recovery, not just in the state. I think these are translatable to other jurisdictions. And I can see there are people here from other Australian jurisdictions, so it'll be interesting to know their views as well. While some of the statistics are challenging, they also point us to areas for urgent action and for areas where we need to prepare for the future. For example, as the number of digital devices in homes is set to rise by 124% by 2020, which is next year, so too will the amount of e-waste increase. As many of you know, e-waste contains resources including precious metals, which can have significant market values. If we're ready for it, this is a massive opportunity for the state to derive value from a new and increasing waste stream. These trends also tell us that we are still actively seeking out opportunities to export recyclate to other nations. Overwhelmingly, what you and others tell us is that this must stop. We must build the capability for recycling here in Australia, and the opportunity to lead is available to New South Wales now. We can also see that waste accounts for 5% of freight movements around Sydney. I think that's quite a conservative figure, but you know, as some of you know, we like to be conservative with our data. But it still points to a need to take a whole-of-system approach to any long-term strategy, taking into account the ease or difficulty with which waste vehicles navigate our streets, and the cost of transporting waste is absolutely crucial. The statistic here is about Sydney, but the issue is just as live and relevant, except the details are different and the pressures are different in regional New South Wales. One final point I draw out here from these trends is that changing consumer behaviour is critical, and we've heard some amazing lessons from Ronnie and from Rosalina this morning about that. Those of you who work with citizens, and many of you do, on educating them on the correct recycling and disposal methods, at the curbside in particular, know what a big, challenging and important task this will be. Many of you have already come to us through various means to talk about what you expect from a strategy, and I just want to touch on some commonalities that we've seen emerging, and also a couple of, I guess, areas of divergence or special requirements. So common themes that have emerged, and I hope they resonate with you, and I'd be very interested to hear your feedback throughout today and tomorrow. The strategy has to build trust and certainty in and for the waste sector, and that includes local councils as well as industry. The strategy must carefully balance risk with innovation. Consistent standards for data collection, measurement and analysis are crucial. We're being challenged to take a whole-of-system view and really articulate clearly who's responsible for what in each part of the system. Use targets, penalties and standards to set a level playing field and hold people to account when they aren't met. Leverage informed public discourse and harness current public pressure. And I think this, again, this final one speaks very much to both the speakers earlier this morning, and that's to treat waste as a resource. It's the time for thinking about waste as something that we bury or get rid of is past. Someone said to me, so 1990s. Time to move on. We've also heard some really specific needs in some areas of divergence, and I want to assure people who've raised views that are different from the common themes that there is a space for divergence as well. There's a space for some very particular or tailored approaches. So, for example, I've had the privilege of speaking to many regional and metro councils specifically about their needs in relation to a long-term strategy, and both groups have been clear that while a statewide strategy is required, the specific pressures and opportunities in each region have to be acknowledged. Yes, set global targets across the state, but take into account the different pressures that we all face in different regions, particularly levy paying versus non-levy paying. And we're encountering some debate, and again, I'm sure some of you have views about this, on whether to focus on changing consumer behaviour or changing manufacturer and producer behaviour. I would imagine that it lies somewhere in a combination of the two, but some people feel very strongly about targeting one or other end of the supply chain. And as many of us know, and as we've really, it's very timely to have heard from Rosalina this morning, the issues we're facing sit in an international context. Many jurisdictions across the globe are experiencing the same issues and formulating responses. And that's most clearly seen, I think, in the wake of the National Sword policy decision. But we can see that different jurisdictions have adapted differently. Some, including us, are continuing to seek out Southeast Asian countries who will accept that waste. Some are supporting more innovative approaches. Some are landfilling that waste that they were formerly exporting. But there are several common levers that are employed across what we call this benchmark group, so those countries that you can see up there, but also other jurisdictions. Several common levers to reduce barriers to recycling and improve waste disposal practices. Every comparable jurisdiction that we've looked at has a clear strategy for a circular economy or a zero waste goal, and a strong legislative and regulatory framework. Some common themes are support for innovation and research, developing an end market for recyclates, extended product responsibility schemes, communications, engagement and education. And again, I feel like the groundwork has been laid by the two women who spoke before me so well, that we are at a critical decision point. There is a huge demand from community for government leadership in waste reduction and management. Yes, they're also looking to business. Yes, they're also looking to local councils and to other people who play in this space. But government leadership is very much sought by the community. Councils and businesses are looking for regulatory certainty and coordinated government approach to waste policy and infrastructure planning, and they can see that that's been done in other New South Wales strategies such as the State Infrastructure Strategy and the Transmission Infrastructure Strategy. It can be done, it should be done. And globally and nationally, other jurisdictions are moving ahead with concerted action towards a circular economy. And in some cases, a circular economy is well embedded for particular waste types. So this creates, of course, a huge range of opportunities. Some would say challenges. I like to say opportunities. I hope that that's how they translate. So the first is a sustainable recycling industry. We can take a leadership approach in a sustainable recycling industry. And we're hearing from you very clearly that there are some promising developments at the federal level. That doesn't mean we should pause our own efforts. Take the initiative. New South Wales can become a leader in this space. We need to deliver certainty through a clear and stable agenda to give industry players a level of confidence to invest, and that government needs to take a leadership approach by, for example, in procuring recycled materials. In terms of infrastructure, a range of the things, there's a huge range of views that we've heard. But one of the themes is that a lot of the building blocks are already there for infrastructure. Industry is looking at how to innovate. Industry is looking at how to invest. They're ready to do it, but government needs to enable further progress, whether that's by reviewing the scale of grants and investment, or whether, and Ronnie spoke to this point in a different context, whether using regulation to essentially get out of the way. Consistent, transparent and relevant data, which is a theme that keeps coming up, that will also support infrastructure decisions, as will a clear direction from government, of course. And also that infrastructure is not just about building facilities, finding land and building a facility. We need to consider planning requirements, transport and freight, and the regulatory settings once those facilities are operating. And then finally, energy from waste. We've heard some salient points from Rosalina this morning about energy from waste. It's very much a live topic here, of course. And as many of you would know, we took a bold step in 2014 and released the Energy from Waste policy. It has some ambitious settings, but we don't have an energy from waste facility here in New South Wales yet. Those bold settings are sitting in isolation from other policy and regulatory frameworks. And we now have an opportunity to put energy from waste into a broader strategic context. And as Rosalina pointed out this morning, to think about what do we want the role for energy from waste to be, not now, but in 20 and 40 years' time. I know there are many people here who aren't from local government, but with such a significant contribution already made by local government and with such a significant impact of the strategy, I do want to focus on local government just for a moment here and to really recognise what a key player local government is in the success of the waste management and resource recovery that New South Wales has experienced. I think, we talk a lot about the challenges. We can also take a moment to reflect how strong the progress is that we've made. And local government in particular delivers the service, educates the residents, operates the facilities in many cases. So, for example, there are 284 disposal facilities in New South Wales operated by local government. That's 89% of all the facilities that are operated here in New South Wales. Councils have facilitated nearly 143 million red bin lifts every year, and 94% of the state now have curbside waste services, and that's a tribute to the local government effort. And local government, I think you already know, and I've heard loud and clear, that councils are already thinking about these issues. There's no sitting back and waiting for someone else to take leadership. Through your work in regional organisations of councils, voluntary waste groups, and then as you transition to joint organisations, you already look at the pressing waste issues in your local areas, those that are there now and those that are emerging and that you can see coming through in the future. And I was privileged, for example, to be part of a presentation from Wes Rock about their approach to waste infrastructure in their area. And part of our work on the strategy has to be to knit those collaborative approaches together to find those common themes and develop statewide or region-wide solutions from the work that you've already done. You know what works. Now, this is relevant to everybody, not only to local councils, but to anybody who has a view. As I said at the beginning, I welcome the whole range of views. I expect to be challenged. I doubt there's anyone here I have to invite to challenge or debate with me, but for the record, I invite it. I'll be here today, I'll be here tomorrow, and I would love to discuss with you in person. If we can't discuss in person, as many of you know, I'm very happy to come to your board meetings, come to your ROC meetings, come to the to events that you have organised so that we can really drill into those issues that you are facing. There's a formal consultation process, a collaborative consultation process which has already begun. A couple of you here have participated in that already, and many of you have participated in conversations with me which are feeding into that process. We've talked a lot about how is it that the whole range of local government concerns and views from the waste managers at the council level all the way through to the GMs and to the elected officials, how can they all be represented? And some of you have come up with ideas as to how they can be fed through. I would encourage you to continue using your network so that you access the views at full gamut. The full gamut of views, and you know where to find me. And we'd really like to know if you think that you have a particular case study or example of best practice. It doesn't have to be in your region, it could be somewhere else. Then that is something that we'd really welcome as well. But as I say, many of you will be engaged through a formal consultation process. Don't let that constrain you. I know that, again, many of you don't need to be invited to not let that constrain you, but please, that's what I'm here to do, is to gather your views and debate some of those issues with you. Having said that, I'm hoping that I've left enough time for questions. I have? Great.